I'm going to start with a slide which is not of London, but is in fact of Glasgow. And these are the Red Road flats in Glasgow, in the process of being demolished, as you can see. And back in 2014, when Glasgow won the, Glasgow was hosting the Commonwealth Games, there was a discussion about the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games, and it was proposed that actually this demolition of the Red Road flats be broadcast live on television to an audience of billions of people around the world as part of that opening ceremony. Now, there was an outcry in Glasgow, and lots of local people thought this was a really terrible idea, not least because, although a problematic housing estate, there were people still living there, and the demolition was controversial. And in fact, the council backtracked on these plans, and this was not included in the opening ceremony. But for me, the very fact that actually politicians even thought that this was an appropriate set of images for a celebration of British culture on the world stage really is, to me, a sort of indication of where we're at with regard to social housing, or what we used to call council housing, which is really this current government, and I would say that the seeds have been laid down really for a long time now, the last generation, is completely ideologically opposed to the continuation of social housing. This is the Haygate estate. This was the Haygate estate, because, as you know, the Haygate was demolished a couple of years ago. 3,000 homes, predominantly social housing, people on low-income homes, and it was demolished to make way for Elephant Park, which you see before you here. 3,000 homes demolished, replaced by 2,500 approximately luxury apartments, of which I thought it was 79 were social housing, but Ollie, you say it's 74. And affordable housing has been redefined as up to 80% of market rent. So with prices ranging from, you know, 750,000 to $1 million for a two-bed apartment, well, I do think most of the audience couldn't afford to live there. So that's really how affordable housing is being redefined. But, you know, the Haygate is a controversial and particularly egregious example of this. It's always held up, but actually it is emblematic of something that we are now seeing rolled out across London. And Crispin referred to these blocks of council estates which are untouchable across London. Absolutely not untouchable. This is now being rolled out as policy. Around 100 estates are either have been fully or partially demolished or are being in the process of that. Carpenter's Estate, Robin Hood Gardens, Haggerston Estate, Aylesbury, West End, etc., etc., etc. I won't go into it. It's a very, very long and contentious list, and I think Claire referred to how contentious a lot of these battles, because that's what they are in these places are. And that's actually, the government now has a programme, a estate regeneration programme, where it's proposing to actually earmark an additional 100 estates for a similar sort of process. So, I mean, we are talking tens of thousands of people on hundreds of estates which are coming down. Why, in a time of acute housing crisis, are we knocking down all the affordable housing? Well, we have the sort of what I would call the sink estate narrative, which has been advanced by David Cameron, which is that these are terrible places which blight the lives of residents. Certainly, refurbishment is needed in lots of estates. Certainly, you know, lots of estates are not without their problems. But I think the key issue lies in what some of you might be aware of as a phrase known as the rent gap. And I think Lord Adonis, who's the now chair of the National Infrastructure Commission, former Labour minister, put it very well when he told the Financial Times, "The scale of council-owned land is vast and greatly underappreciated. There are particularly large concentrations of council-owned land in London, and this is some of the highest priced land in the world." So that is what is driving this policy. And I think housing policy in London is profoundly misframed as a question of supply and demand and a numbers game, with the argument being that if we simply boost numbers, somehow house prices will come down. We're building 400 towers now, 73% of which are going to be residential towers. This is not going to bring house prices down, because this market is responding to global capital, much of which is from very dodgy sources, rather than local demand. I don't have time to go into that. I'm focusing really on the scandal, which is the demolition of London's housing estates. So my wish is that the next mayor abandon as soon as possible this programme.